19 appears to have flipped over following landing. The Toronto Pearson Airport released a statement on X saying, quote, emergency teams are responding. All passengers and crew are accounted for. The flight originated from Minneapolis-St. Paul. Senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve joins me now. Chris, what do we know?
Well, John, we understand that some federal officials are hearing reports of some injuries here, but again, the airport says everyone is accounted for. There are images trickling out that show this CRJ 900, which is a regional jet. It was operated by Delta's regional carrier Endeavor, but operating as a Delta flight. The plane appears to be upside down. The wings and tail ripped off. The nose landing gear still in place. People are being taken off the airplane. Medical crews have responded in Toronto. The Toronto Pearson Airport had gotten a significant amount of snow over the last week. In fact, over the weekend, they were working quite hard to clear. It had been about 7 inches of snow going into yesterday. So weather conditions there will be something that will certainly be looked at here. But we're looking at another U.S. airliner. This one operated as a Delta connection flight that had an accident while or shortly after landing, in this case in Toronto. We don't know how many people are on board yet, but the airport says everyone is accounted for. We hear that there may be some injuries, but it does look like the cabin of the airplane, the passenger area of the plane, remained intact fully when whatever went wrong, and it went wrong with enough force, it appears, to have ripped the wings and the tail off the airplane, and it came to rest there on a runway in Toronto. Obviously, this is an unfolding situation. A lot of questions about how this could have happened. What could have resulted in this plane essentially flipping over as it was touching down or shortly after touching down from Minneapolis-St. Paul, John.
Chris, is there anything in that terminology, all are accounted for, that we should take any clues from or that can be put into any further context? Or are they just literally trying to give us the limit of what they know without trying to get ahead of themselves, which is also something we won't do?
I think it's that. I think it's an effort to not get ahead of themselves. We don't know how many people were on this aircraft. The airport says passengers and crew all accounted for. Certainly, they're going to have to be assessed for injuries. It would be almost unfathomable to think that no one was hurt in this kind of accident. So there will likely be some injuries. We are hearing that federal authorities are receiving some reports or some indications there were injuries. Because this incident happened in Canada, the Canadian version of the NTSB will lead this investigation. I've spoken with the U.S. NTSB. They are aware of this incident. They will essentially be invited to join as a party. They will contribute whatever investigators or research investigative power that the Canadian equivalent may need. But this will be led by the Canadians with the NTSB assisting wherever they can here. John, this comes after a real startling period of aviation accidents involving U.S. aircraft. If we think back barely 3 weeks ago, you had the mid-air collision over Washington, D.C. That killed 67 people. 2 days later, you had that Learjet crash in Philadelphia in spectacular fashion, caught on camera. We saw that. That killed 6 people on board, 1 person on the ground, 10 people in a Cessna Citation flying in Alaska en route to Nome. And then just last week here in the Phoenix area, that plane that had a landing gear collapse on landing and crash into another plane, that killed at least 1 person and injured several others. Now we have this incident, which, fingers crossed, we are hoping what the airport means by accounted for is that everybody survived this crash, but we just don't know that, and we don't know the extent of any injuries just yet.
Chris Van Cleve, senior transportation correspondent. Thank you very much, Chris. We're now going to talk to transportation safety expert and analyst Robert Sumwalt, who joins us. Mr. Sumwalt served as the chair of the National Transportation Safety Board. What's your first reaction to this? CRJ 900, Chris reports the tail and wings have been sheared off. It's upside down. Your thoughts?
Well, I think my first thoughts, John, are I'm glad to hear that everyone is accounted for. And hopefully, as you indicated, hopefully that does mean that everybody is at least okay.
And what does it suggest anything to you that it's that the plane is upside down, and obviously we don't want to speculate about things beyond the pictures that we're seeing, but or go too far. But a plane being upside down on the tarmac there, does that suggest anything to you?
Well, I think, as Chris indicated, it's a lot of snow there and on the airport. And I think that, the airport could have been sliding and then somehow or another gone off the runway and gone upside down. So it's really, as you know, it's just a lot of speculation at this point. And we won't
go any farther than that. Help me understand the coordination with the Canadian version of the NTSB. Chris says they'll be taking the lead. But obviously, since the flight originated in the States, I would assume there's a protocol for NTSB working hand in hand with them.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada does an excellent job, and the NTSB will be invited in as an accredited representative, since it is a U.S. registered airplane and U.S. operated airplane. NTSB will be invited in, so they will work hand in hand together to determine what happened here, and most importantly, come up with recommendations to keep something like this from happening again.
All right, Robert Sumwalt, former chair of the National Transportation Safety Board, thank you so much. Just to recap here, a plane landing at Toronto Airport has flipped over. The airport says all passengers and crew are accounted for. That's what we know at the moment. Our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news, and tonight on the CBS Evening News. This has been a CBS News Special Report. I'm John Dickerson in New York.
Hi, everybody. We continue to follow this breaking news out of Canada. A reminder, there isn't a ton that we know at this point, but we will tell you the very latest in what we do know. We're looking at live pictures right now from the Toronto Pearson International Airport, a very snowy tarmac there that you can see. Unclear if this plane, which appears to have rested upside down, is even on a tarmac or runway, but we are working to get more information. So let's catch you up to speed. This is a Delta Airlines flight that has been involved in an accident in Toronto. We just heard from Chris Van Cleve that this was operating as Delta, but it's an Endeavour connection flight, a CRJ 900 regional jet. This was flight 4819. It appears to have flipped over following landing, and we know the airport released a statement on X saying that emergency teams are responding. All passengers and crew are accounted for. We did just hear from that special report, John Dickerson and Chris Van Cleve essentially waving us off from reading too much into what that statement means, but essentially just not getting ahead of themselves with that statement, still working to figure out injuries, the extent of those injuries. This flight departed Minneapolis-St. Paul at 11:34 Central Time. It is about a 2-hour flight. 80 people on board is what we are hearing for the total number of people who were on board. And again, we did hear Chris say it would be unfathomable to think that somebody would not sustain some kind of injury from something like this. The wings and tail, as we see from this imagery, have been ripped off. And we know that the airport has gotten a lot of snow, a ton of snow. They cleared 7 inches of snow yesterday. So weather is something that they will be looking at. And we heard Robert Sumwalt say that while it's too early to speculate, that perhaps the weather conditions could have played some kind of role with any kind of sliding or anything like that, but still working to figure out how a plane, upon landing here at Toronto Pearson International Airport, ends up in this kind of position. We did hear Chris report that the Canadian version of the NTSB will be leading this and that the NTSB is aware and will be invited to join. Again, 80 people on board here, and this really comes just weeks after just one of the deadliest aviation disasters since September 11th. On January 29th, of course, that passenger jet and Black Hawk helicopter colliding mid-air, crashing into the Potomac near Washington, D.C., near Reagan National Airport, all 67 victims having been identified, no survivors from that incident. This is a very harrowing time for aviation right now. And here with the Delta flight from Minneapolis-St. Paul to Toronto with 80 people on board. Certainly, this is going to increase those fears and concerns for many people. It looks like I'm getting some more information here, so bear with me while I go ahead and read it. And the flight attendant union, I should mention, has responded. The union, AFA-CWA, confirming their crew was on this flight and that they will be involved as well. So we have a statement from the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, saying this information is preliminary and subject to change. I'm going to be reading it for the first time along with you hearing it for the first time, but the statement says that Delta Airlines Flight 4819, operated by Endeavour Air, crashed while landing at Toronto Pearson International Airport in Canada around 2:45 p.m. local time on Monday, February 17th. All 80 people on board were evacuated. The CRJ 900 departed Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada will be in charge of the investigation and will provide any updates. They're encouraging local authorities will be the point people for passenger, crew names, medical conditions, etc. The FAA says that they will be posting a preliminary accident incident report in the coming days, usually in the next business day, they say. And so this is really the best news that we can hope for in a situation like this. The statement saying all 80 people on board were evacuated. So they are. I'm sorry, Chelsea, can you repeat? All right, we have new video that we would like to show you. Let's go ahead and play that. Don't know if we can hear it at all. So there's no sound accompanying.
Our plane crash. It's upside down.
This looks like narration from the person who shot the video.
Upside down.
We see this may have been somebody who was on board.
Okay. We're all getting off. Some smoke going on. We're in Toronto. We just landed. Our plane crashed. It's upside down.
All right, so we did just hear that person narrating the video that they're taking, indicating that they were on that flight that had crash landed. You can hear that person being breathless, obviously, after going through something so harrowing, but just incredible news from the FAA that all 80 people on board were evacuated. And we saw also in that video authorities spraying that plane down. But this is more live pictures here, so we can see one of the engines there on the right-hand side of the screen, but we can see really the landing gear toward the nose of the plane on the left-hand side, pointing up toward the sky. Really just an extraordinary sight here with the wings and the tail having been ripped off, and we see emergency vehicles there. Now that all 80 people have been evacuated. So the FAA has ordered a ground stop at Toronto due to the crash. And I'm just trying to see if we have any more information. So CBS News has confirmed that there are injuries. Some have been transported to the hospital, but we are still working to find out how many people are injured or transported and the nature of their injuries. But certainly something that these people went through that they will not ever forget. But this crash landing essentially leading to this plane appearing to have flipped over completely. Again, to catch you all up to speed, we're still working to gather some more information, but this was a flight that involved a Delta Airlines plane that left Minneapolis-St. Paul and arrived at Toronto Pearson Airport, arriving essentially what looks like upside down here. We know that CP24 in Canada reports as many as 8 people were hurt, with the extent of their injuries not immediately clear. Again, CBS News has confirmed that there are injuries, but we are working to figure out how many, and we are also working to figure out the extent. So we did hear from Chris Van Cleve, our senior transportation correspondent, as well as Robert Sumwalt, who is an aviation consultant for CBS News, in that special report, both pointing out the weather. Obviously, this area covered in snow, got a lot of snow, had to clear the snow yesterday, inches. And so that will be something certainly that everybody is looking at to figure this out. But again, it comes at an extremely harrowing time for aviation, at a time when people's senses are a little more heightened when they're flying due to that crash that happened over the Potomac at the end of last month. This was a regional jet. It was flight 4819. And this is a flight that should be about an hour and 50 minutes. and it had left Minneapolis-St. Paul, 10:30 a.m. local time, which is Central Time. It was supposed to arrive at 1:20 p.m. Eastern Time. And again, if I go back to that statement and I can see the exact time that the crash landing happened, around 2:45 p.m. local time. Let me see. So Eastern Time. So around 2:45 p.m. local, which is also Eastern Time. This is the FAA statement that I was just reading for you, saying that all 80 people on board were evacuated. And we can say that CBS News has confirmed injuries, but we are working to find out exactly the extent of those injuries, how many people were taken to the hospital, et cetera. Certainly, there are going to be a lot of questions for the NTSB, the Canadian version of the NTSB, which will be taking the lead that many Americans and people around the world will be having right now as it relates to airline safety. But we are going to continue to monitor these breaking news images as well as this breaking news story and bring you the latest. But for now, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. You're watching CBS News 24/7.
Here comes a big one.
What I've seen, it's like chaos.
This is the pager that Hezbollah was using.
How was this possible?
Oh, come on.
Come on.
Whoa.
Wow.
Ask me the hard-hitting questions. I'm open to all of it.
60 minutes. Is this what you want?
60 minutes.
60 minutes!
It's time for the CBS News original, 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
we're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
Go to the ends of the earth.
We'll hit the heights.
A great adventure together.
And reach for the stars.
Star power. I like it.
So cool.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
Something that's undeniable.
With mindfulness.
Innovative.
Magical.
It's like being a child.
And truly original reporting.
God, you do your research.
I tell a good story.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
No matter how you start your day, one thing is clear.
Actually, two things. Pretty sure it's three.
Guys, whether it's news, money, health, or wellness, sports, movies, or even inspiration.
Clearly, CBS Mornings is the place to be. That's like 7 things.
Okay, clearly, I'm bad at math, always been.
Clearly.
Okay. Clearly, CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7 on CBS.
What happens when you get conversation over conflict?
Anyone that doesn't agree women should be in the submarine force has to ask themselves why they would think about that.
I think they've taught me to have grace and compassion.
When we follow the human side of the headline.
Life is a little bit different now.
It's going to take a while to get used to. And I say it to myself that I can't make this about me.
When we put people before politics.
What would happen if it was harder for Mexican residents to come over to work in Presidio?
I think we'd be in serious trouble.
Are you okay, ma'am?
What happens when you experience the story?
I'm shocked at how devastated this neighborhood is. How bad is it in your house?
Look at it.
When news takes you where the story happens.
We've just crossed into Lebanon.
Here in Chicago.
Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania.
When the world's best journalists come together to cover your world, you get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
The Vatican says Pope Francis will remain in the hospital to deal with what they're calling a complex clinical picture. A spokesperson says doctors have changed the treatment plan for the infection that began as a bout of bronchitis last week. The Vatican says the Pope does not have a fever, was able to eat breakfast this morning, and is in stable condition. Pope Francis has faced a series of health problems over the years, including multiple lung infections. Well, we are tracking the worst measles outbreak in Texas in nearly 30 years. Officials have confirmed 48 cases, most of them in Gaines County near Lubbock. According to the CDC, cases have not just been found in Texas this year, but 5 other states as well.